Welcome to my channel. Today I think it would be interesting to compare the closure with JavaScript object-oriented style, and when it comes to being able to access the outer variable from the inner function. So if you're from a Java kind of language background, if you want to access the private variable in the inner function, then you use the count method, and the state is the count is protected by the private variable modifier. So you're able to do this, find the count on the object that this refers to, and that's how you do it in the object-oriented language. For a JavaScript closure, you don't have this variable or something like this. When you created the inner function and when you return this function, the function was still able to access this inner variable, even though it seems like the function is already finished, and the inner function is still able to get the variable from the scope where it is created. So we say that the increment function has closure over the count. So it's almost like an environment where it inherited from this variable. And the reason why it's in scope is because the surrounding scope where the function was created. So let's discuss why use a closure instead of an object. So there's less structure when you need only piece of shared state. Like in this case, this only count is shared. So in Java, you have to create like this kind of variable. But in JavaScript, you just need to do this kind of thing that it seems you don't need to create this kind of structure. You don't need to create a private variable. You just create a normal variable and the function will just remember it. And the state can be private without becoming an object property. So if you say things like if you use a style, then you have to do something like increment count, which is outside code, can be manipulated by other objects, which is less private. With the closure, because there's no count, there's no way to access that variable like that. It's more private. And with the private state, field can be protected by class, but manipulated by other methods. With a closure is a scoped variable and protected by the scope. And third is the function can carry the context with them. So if you create this function, it creates a context by itself. So then you can call this function with the kind of context that it was created from. So this function has that context where it was created because we already called this function with this context. So in this case, if we use a method, it might be more tedious to have to create another variable and pass the event. So this makes closure very natural for callback, event handlers, timers, promises, middleware, defense functions, and so on, because they carry a piece of state with themselves, and it can create many independent functions with their own state like that. OP can accomplish the same thing with two counter instance, but closure version doesn't require this piece of state to be represented as objects. So I think that with OP style, you can put the state on the object and let the method have gain access to it. And closure is when you keep the state in the surrounding scope and carry that with the function. And so the function can carry that piece of information everywhere. The advantage is that you can pass this function around without having to package the required state into an object. And we also have to remember that every time the function was created, the surrounding variables might not be the same. So we have to remember that. They might be not very intuitive, and we will have to discuss this a little bit later in other videos in terms of the implication of using JavaScript in the React context. I hope this makes sense.